Hey, Mark, good to
Hi,
see you again.
Manuel. Good to see you. You're going to
Good
be in
morning,
Madrid?
Mark.
Good morning, Eric. Yeah, I wanted to catch
Hey,
up
good morning, Mark.
and stay out of the way for the whimsy stuff, but of course, I'm interested in the reference architecture discussions that will start after Madrid. But I want to catch up and be a fly on the wall today.
All right. Well, we're going to hopefully finalize the draft today, but it needs to be done like by middle of this week. Done. Except I just put in another pull request. Actually, cutting a bunch of text from it. So, anyway, so. I'm gonna start sharing my screen here in a minute.
Were you just saying there's something going on in Madrid coming up? Did I miss that?
It's the IETF meeting in Madrid in the third week of July. Yeah.
Got it.
Please open the document and put your names.
Hi, this is Hank.
Hey, Hank. Hello, everyone. All right. So, lots of content created over the week. Already messaged the mailing list. I feel we should preserve it. Great content, and we should also not present it in Madrid. Again, we can discuss. That's my opinion. So I've had extensive conversations with Peter Castleman. He can't make it today, but he is the director of product for Spiral, and he's either the leader of the Whimsy working group or very, very active in it. So this is the person that we need as a host. But the concerns are that we need to. It's kind of beggars can't be choosers. We need to be very, very careful.
Is it just me that I'm not able to hear him, his internet, or?
I think, Mark, your internet connection is a little
right.
bit shaky, and some people can't hear you at all. And I have outages when I try to hear you.
Is this better?
Same here.
I just killed my audio. Is this better by any chance? If not, I have another way of doing this.
It sounds better.
Yeah.
Okay, I killed my video, so no pretty face of mine. Okay,
Oh,
so
well.
so Peter Castleman, I had a lot of discussions. He's very, very active in Whimsy. He is the person we need in our corner.
Oh, we lost you again, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oops.
All right. That's what I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna switch to a different connection, but it's just going to take me a minute here.
Yeah.
We'll wait patiently. Fish.
Sorry about that. I need to have a conversation with my broadband provider. This not very good today.
We want names. Who's your provider?
T-Mobile.
Oh, and I'm on 5G T-Mobile Germany, and it's working like a charm.
Like my 5G actually works. It's my at home that doesn't.
So is it your office from where you are connecting right now, Mark?
No, I work from home. I have this at home broadband. It's just. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Still, it is showing red on your internet, which is a bit strange.
How's now? This should be better.
I can hear you at least, I can say for sure.
Yeah, well, okay. Great. All right. Okay, so I'll start over. So I had lots of conversations with Peter Castleman this week. He is the leader of the Whimsy working group. Or certainly very senior in it. So that's someone we need in our corner. And then as a result of these conversations, I went through all of the Whimsy documents with sort of one thing in mind. I wanted to understand how Whimsy documents as written are compatible or incompatible with our ideas around trustworthy workload identity. And what I discovered is mostly good. It's mostly good in that Whimsy wants to stay out of credential issuance completely, and Whimsy insists on token binding. So those are our main two. And then as far as provenance, it turns out there is a little bit of disconnect because they want to treat like JTI claim as optional, certainly in the S2S protocol. But those are surmountable difficulties, differences. However, if you look closer, the Whimsy architecture, on one hand, says we want to stay out of credential issuance. On the other hand, they make this notion of an agent that procures credentials for a workload very central. And I pointed out, so if you look at the reference architecture, figure 4 has this agent. There is another mention of the agent. And for us, the agent, it's fine to have the agent. You just cannot be external to the workload because you cannot have, you cannot rely on the hosting environment for attestation, right? So, one of the things I might ask Whimsy reference architecture to do is to create kind of a separate profile, maybe for confidential computing, and redraw figure 4 in the reference architecture to put the agent inside the workload. So let me, I'm going to start sharing my screen here.
Thanks. Yeah, that would be nice. So,
And show
something that Mateusz and I were calling an enlightened workload. That would be the workload that has that agent and can help.
Yeah.
And the feedback you gave on the list was, this is all too much. This goes into our own architecture or some other architecture document, and we agree. So while we were writing this, we were, isn't this maybe too remote attestation heavy? Isn't this too in too much detail? We were using colloquial terms to convey meaning, like the stickiness. We're calling this fidelity now of the workload, and all that needs more polish. And I agree, we don't have to push anything into for 0.0 that is requirements for Whimsy at all, because
Correct.
I think the scope of the document changed over time, and the issue we were addressing is from the beginning and not from I want to say now. Okay.
So this is the document I'm talking about, figure 4. That's the one that doesn't work for us, right? So, but redraw this picture and put agent inside the workload, and all of a sudden it does, right? That's so. So when we go in front of Whimsy, we need to basically make it very obvious what it is, like very clear that it's mostly good. So this is the gist of my conversation with Peter. Is we cannot walk into there and demand anything. But they will be very accommodating if we simply ask nicely to consider that, there is this other deployment mechanism that mostly works, but here are a few very key, very focused differences that, would help us all work together. So that's, I want to take a look at the pull request that I just put forth, because that might be the final thing that, we do. So, Hank, you had your hand up, and I think Manu had his hand up for a minute.
Just one question. You were talking about moving the box agent into the workload realm, but isn't it better to have an agent outside at the platform realm and adding an agent to the workload realm, or did I get it wrong?
I am saying the agent cannot live outside the workload. It's part of the hosting environment, and we can't
But you
trust it.
also need an agent on the platform, so it's two agents then.
No, you don't really. Why do you need an agent? Your workload can talk to the verifier directly.
Yeah, but your platform don't necessarily can, and the workload not necessarily can talk about the platform. So,
Okay. So the agent has to be a dumb pipe, right? So it cannot be like it needs to be. So effectively, the workload has to attest itself. It has to talk to the platform. So we should also make it very clear: there is the hosting environment. And there is the platform. The platform is what gives you the quote. You trust the platform. You don't trust your hosting environment.
then I don't understand the concept, the difference between a platform and hosting environment.
Okay.
Today.
So let me give you let me say that this is an actual use case that freaks me out. So so my employer JP Morgan operates in China. In China, we consider what's called a high risk location because we must operate in there for sure, big business. But there is a number of reasons why we sandbox it. And effectively, all traffic to and from China effectively then goes through Singapore. Used to be Hong Kong, now Singapore for obvious reasons. And as a result, in China, we have these reverse proxies, right? That we're supposed to funnel all the traffic through so they can go to Singapore and then further out into our main network. So the Chinese regulators have a requirement, right? So and again, regulators, their word is not optional. That's not a suggestion. So there is a requirement from Chinese regulators that basically says, on your proxies, on your reverse proxies, you will run our software. We're not going to tell you what the software is or what it does, only that it must be there. So that software is what I call the hosting environment. So, okay, more concretely, if I'm running a virtual machine on a physical server, the platform is the physical server, it's the CPUs, and maybe some firmware. And the hosting environment is the hypervisor and whatever else runs outside of my virtual machine, right? So I cannot trust the hosting environment. Whatever is running in there, it needs to stay out of my TCP. But I do trust my platform, meaning the hardware, the Intel CPU, AMD CPU, etc. Let's go through open hands, Eric. Eric dropped.
Sorry, I'm talking on mute. Yeah, I thank you for that clarity. That clarifies it a significant amount. In terms of agent, what is this? So who is administering or managing the said agent?
So for agent, the best example, real world example I can show you is in the SPIFFE architecture. There is this thing called the Workload API.
Yes.
So the agent is the thing that maintains all the credentials for the different workloads. So on the same machine, you can have multiple workloads, and the agent effectively may obtain and cache credentials for all your workloads. And the Workload API is what the agent exposes to you, and the workload calls the Workload API, and the Workload API returns effectively a certificate. And that basically has no parameters that call. All it does is return you a certificate. And if you try to have that agent implement your remote attestation, you will find that it's incapable of doing so, right? So you cannot implement it that way because you can't provide a quote. There are no arguments. There's no nodes. There's like no way to integrate that with like an attestation service, verify. So we're saying, this is what we have to say for Whimsy. Keep whatever you're doing. We're not touching anything you're doing, but also give us a way to do our thing too. And for as long as Whimsy strictly stays out of the credential acquisition business and only uses it as an example, we are perfectly fine with that because the workload identity token, once we obtain it, we can work with that, right? It has proof of possession, like all the things work. But
So
This all-
it could be anything from like HashiCorp Vault to whatever. It's not a specific agent that exists within the open source community. That it's
Well-
just something that will provide an API that gives
Yeah.
workload
So
attestation.
this is an architecture. So agent is this
Yep.
building block. And I'm only observing that the agent, whatever talks to your verifier, which is in this
Yep.
box called attestation, okay, so we can have a pass-through agent that is not trusted, but basically carries messages back and forth. Fine, that's not
Yep.
interesting. What's interesting is the logic that goes contacts the verifier and actually, does the dance, whatever the dance is, depending on the credential, to get the token or the certificate into the workload.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the ask. That has to be the ask of the Whimsy working group to allow both modes of operation. Yogesh.
So 2 points. One thing about the operational modus operandi, we can convince the Whimsy group that we want to create a profile of Whimsy, which
Yes.
is specifically for confidential computing, and they will allow us to absorb as an ITF draft going forward, where our Whimsy architecture, which is specific to confidential computing, can be a profile extension or can be a profile document. And I think ITF should not have a problem absorbing that as a specific use case.
That's one way of going about it.
Yeah.
Another way of going about it is to basically say, look, guys, can we introduce another figure 4A into the Whimsy reference architecture that has the agent inside the workload? Can we also go through and and I sent the email to the mailing list this morning, basically outlining this very few scalpel changes, right? That basically say, like, if you say it this way, and again, you'll see that example. So the workload should update the credential. It's not like there is a service that provides the credential to the workload. So like it's kind of an inversion.
Mark, I'm struggling to understand how can agent be a part of workload, because agent needs to understand how the workload is running, what is its security characteristics before issuing its identity credentials. So effectively, agent is like a relying party, right? Which is needing
No.
attestation from the workload
No.
before it issues the identity credential, right?
No. An agent is simply an API that talks to your verifier.
Yeah. So
I have
agent might.
have a hand up to this question. Is the paravisor that Microsoft produces and interworks with an agent? That's the thing inside the workload that enables, for example, VTBM access and has some other software frosting. It's basically a wrapper around your workload. And is that an agent? An instance of an agent?
We should talk to Microsoft
absolutely.
folks about that,
Yep.
right? But for purposes of reference architecture, whatever that logic is, a workload needs to attest itself, right? So remember having trusting your hosting environment to attest you. That's what I call the do-it-yourself dentistry. Like, you have to rely on the remote party. You cannot rely on anything running on the same box as you, except as a dumb pipe.
So you're talking about like adjacent workloads you can't trust. Is that what you're saying, Mark?
I'm
Running on
saying
the same
that I'm saying that if it's not inside the same trusted execution environment as the workload, it has only a what I call the quote unquote dumb pipe part of attestation. It can relay messages back and forth. So, for instance, the agent may know which verifier to contact. It's a dumb pipe, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Agent in Whimsy architecture today is very powerful, and that's not compatible with what we're trying to accomplish.
Got it.
So I'm still confused. So is the paravisor a example for that agent or not? Because that is a powerful.
I don't know how to answer your question because I haven't examined that architecture.
Okay, because that is what. So I think everybody, Google, AWS, and Azure all provide such a substrate layer inside the workload execution environment to facilitate.
Well, let me put it this way: if it's attested alongside the workload, then party on.
That's
right?
that's actually what that's what I was going to suggest, Mark. Instead of trying to ask Whimsy to put the agent inside the workload, why don't we say that in the confidential computing use cases, you would want the agent itself to be running in a TEE, so that you actually have a chain of attestation where the agent
Well,
attests itself to the server, and
so
then the
the
workload
agent and
attests
the
itself
workload need to
to
be
the
in the
agent.
same T. That's why I'm saying put the agent inside the workload, right? Put, rather, the more accurate wording would be make sure that the agent and the workload share the same trust execution environment. So two workloads that are mutually distrustful cannot share an agent.
Hold on. When you, so maybe I misunderstand the word TE then. I'm thinking in terms of enclaves, for instance, with SGX. The workload can be one process working with its own enclave. The agent is its own process working in another enclave. Are you calling that one TE, one platform, or two TEs?
I see what you're getting to with that. So I'm basically saying it's a unit of attestation. You attest them together.
Okay, if they run on the same platform, on the same chip, right, they can use local attestation, so the agent can attest any other workloads that run on that same machine.
Yeah, that's
and now
is,
your agent
sure.
is simply, it's the same diagram as this, except that the requirement for CC is that the agent itself run in a confidential computing environment, in a confidential computing mode, essentially.
Right.
And that I think would be a cleaner model, because if you look at the role of the agent in this picture, it is in charge for getting attestation information from the workload. It gets it from a source that you don't like, which is the host operating system.
So for
and
SGX, that model works.
In a CC environment, just to finish my sentence, in the CC environment, it's the same idea, except that it gets the evidence directly from the workload, which itself gets its stuff from the quoting enclave, right, running on the platform.
Yeah. So for SGX that will work, but for a confidential VM, I do not know where that agent would live. So yes, we need to consider all these cases and make sure we provide the correct diagram to them. But what cannot work is the current spiral model where the agent went and lives outside of all the workloads and procures the credentials for all of them based on, extraspecting the workload, looking at it from the outside.
Yeah.
And some out-of-band mechanism, and then it basically gives out these credentials like candy.
Yeah, we are in violent agreement about that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, does this account for continued attestation throughout the life cycle of the workload? For what you're saying, Mark, are you saying?
Let's table that one.
Okay.
I know it's important, but also it's a big rat's nest. I'm not quite ready for this whimsy conversation to talk about it.
I understand, no problem.
Yeah, so what I heard was that the agent inside the workload environment has to obtain remote attestation evidence, and that is an interesting phrasing. So we want to understand what exactly. So we want to understand that the platform characteristics are the capabilities are there and used when executing the trustworthy workload content. And then we want that trustworthy workload content to provide us with the appropriate evidence, first of all, about the platform, its capabilities, and their used, and then about itself. So, and that's the purpose of the agent inside the workload instance. Did I rephrase that correctly?
Yeah, I guess the important part is agent is new. Under confidential computing, agent must be in your TCP.
Yeah, without the hosting environment though, and that is an interesting twist to the story.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's I'm not entirely sure if that is captured prominently in our requirements document yet.
It's gonna be.
Okay. But thank you. So I see your problem. I understand that other, I want to say, whimsy scenarios allows for an agent in on the hosting environment and have no problem with that because, for example, it's inside the TCP. But if it's just a black box software by some external third party that you don't know if to trust, it's a weird TCP. So it's actually not a TCP. It includes a black box thing, and that is true also for some of the agents provided by, for example. Oh no, I don't have to say something wrong, but I think, please take this with a grain of salt, that Google's agent inside the CVM currently is also not open source, but will be, as will be Microsoft's, but AWS's definitely is open source. So so that is, I think, also a requirement to be able to become part of the TCP. Otherwise, you're just trusting opaque block of software, and it's not really a TCP anymore.
Okay, fair enough. But again, those are finer details. Let's go through the rest. Mateusz.
Oh, yeah, I was struggling with unmute. A couple of things I want to raise. First, actually, going back to the comment Henk made at the beginning, when we were discussing platform binding, we coined terms, I mean, in parallel to what we are using in the TDX world, to distinguish what we call an enlightened workload from an unenlightened one. And the enlightened workload very much synergizes with what has been said already with this whole notion of agent inside, because basically we're saying the workload itself is aware of the platform's facilities for attestation. It's going to self-request the attestation through whichever platform provided means. By the way, I wouldn't go into the nitty-gritty details there, because when we go there, we would find out that the platform does provide an agent on its own within the TCP. For example, with the confidential VMs, there is a quoting service, which is machine-wide. It's actually not going to be, one per workload. The workloads share this service, but they are within TCP, and the platform segregates the workloads, so all fine there. But I would just say this absolutely I'm aligned with us requesting this addition to Whimsy in this kind of agent inside, so to speak, addition. However, I wouldn't discard the existing architecture of theirs neither. Because
no. I'm not by no means am I saying discard. I'm saying for confidential workloads, you just have to be careful that your agent is in your TCP.
Bear with me though. I'm referring to confidential workloads still, because I mean, if we accept the reality of how things are progressing typically, and are people rolling out legacy applications, I don't think it's rational to expect everybody to now bring in the agent inside their TCBs. There might be like an interim phase where you have a legacy workload, which you won't be able to modify, but you still want the goodness of a safer like key bearer, the disbursement mechanism of keys. And for those, I mean, I would second this is not entirely end-to-end confidential computing, but this better than the today's scenarios. This, by the way, is what we would call unenlightened workload. And I would say if the agent is now considered part of platform, still attested, still somewhat doing the attestation, but external to the workload, we still get some of the properties. Yes, we get key sharing. By the way, this is tying back to the HSM conversation as well, but it's not nothing. So that's my other comment. Let's not only focus on the mode of whims we want to add. The existing mode that they have, we can work with limited TCB assertions.
Yeah, and we should be able to thread that needle. I do believe. In fact, I do not believe that in every case, every workload is going to generate every key and certify it. I do believe that some keys will be obtained from HSM, contingent on attestation. That's going to be like a mainline use case. We can't just discard it, right? But the same architecture actually works for both. Whether the agent obtains a key for a credential, that the key part we're zeroing in on here is the agent must be in your TCP.
Agreed. In TCP is the proper phrasing. I would frown on saying the only way of doing that is putting the agent inside the workload.
Okay, but putting the agent inside your TCP is, I guess, what I'm trying to get at. So, if I may, Nathaniel, you had your hand up for a while. Let's go to you, and then I want to go through this pull request I just put in because we only have half an hour left.
Yeah, thanks everybody. This is my first time in this meeting, so I am struggling a little bit to follow along. I have two questions here. One, is there a document that describes this architecture as you're proposing that I could read through? And then the second one is, I was hoping to just summarize what I think I understand. And I'm hoping that you can echo back to me whether or not I'm correct or not.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that there is some sort of agent which lives either alongside or within the workload, which can do an attestation to a verifier, obtain a token, and then can use that token to obtain a workload identity from some other source. Is that correct?
A couple of ways. So I just put the link to our current very, very early reference architecture document. So if you, once you request access, I'll grant it. So anyway, so there's that. But yeah, there is a couple of ways a workload can obtain a credential for us. One is that the workload generates a key and then does some sort of a certificate signing request around it, couples it with some quotes, some attestation information, goes to a CA and gets back a unique to itself credential around this unique key. So that's one way. The other way is that there is a certificate with a key that lives maybe in some HSM, but the access policy to the HSM is that the workload must pass the attestation in order to retrieve the key. And then a bunch of identical workloads that pass the attestation might share the same key and have the same exact certificate. So the reference architecture describes both modes, I believe. And the only question is, if you were to implement what I just said with Spiffy's workload API, you couldn't, because the workload API does that agent thing, and
I definitely understand that. That part is straightforward to me.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so after this meeting, after we submit this informational draft, we're going to go full bore on the reference architecture again, and we're going to pull all the content that we generate around platform binding, around provenance. We can go arbitrarily rich there. We just have to be very careful that we don't scare whimsy away and ask for the absolute what we need, nothing else. So anyway, I draw your attention now to the text of the pull request. I just want to do a quick recap, get your feedback. If we don't finish in this meeting, we'll have to go over the mailing list. But again, for those of you in Europe, 4th of July is coming for US. The deadline for submission is July 7th. I would like to submit this to the IETF this Wednesday, July 3rd. So we only have today, Thursday, July 3rd. So we have today, tomorrow, and Thursday before submission. So that kind of puts the ultimate time pressure on us. So please do me a courtesy, review the changes on screen. Let me know if you have any issues with what you see, and then we'll scroll down. There aren't many changes. Yeah. Can I move from here?
Yes.
I'm reviewing on my own screen, so it's fine.
All right. So we're now at line 125.
So you're limiting the scenario where the operator of the workload doesn't fully trust the hosting environment to high-risk location IoT deployments. These are just examples, right?
They're just those are examples. So
Yeah.
public clouds, high-risk locations, and IoT deployments. Oh, so I made a mistake. I need to.
Yeah, I think I would highlight an example is literally in text, and then they are examples.
Yeah, I need to. Sorry, I just had a couple of things to change.
The examples are good, but it doesn't flow well. So that's the only thing I'm saying.
The risk of confidential in cases. How about this?
Damn it. And I just look at which line is this on your screen right now?
This is 71.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Yep. Looks good.
Put them down. Go back. So we need to change based on the discussion we just had. We need to change this agent. We need to change this line. So 130. Because we need to understand how this agent is a little.
Did you say line 130?
130.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
now I can see
130, and it says it does not trust and thus cannot rely. I would weaken this a little bit and say it
May not
cannot
trust.
always trust. It
not
does
Yeah.
not always trust and thus cannot always rely on.
Trust.
And because
Or it considers an untrusted.
yeah, maybe.
Well, in particular, the agent must be fully trusted, and
I
in
think
some
that's
scenarios,
regardless. I think the agent must be fully trusted regardless of whether the I forget exactly what you called it. The environment is trusted.
well,
the
so
hosting
The
environment.
hosting environment.
how about we simply
Because-
say the agent must be fully trusted and included in the remote attestation?
Yeah.
So again,
okay.
you can fully trust an opaque blob by a hash of an opaque blob, not knowing what it is. That is called trust, but not trustworthy.
It's called risk
yeah.
acceptance in the world I live in.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would
risk
say it's a
acceptance,
trusted
sure.
workload in contrast to a trustworthy workload. But yeah, but it's risk acceptance.
I
that's
may
correct.
fully trust Microsoft's agent, whatever they provide, because because I trust that the risk of contractual whatever penalties and reputational damage will keep them in line.
That is correct.
I may not have the skills to assess whatever they're, even if they open source it, right? So there is
That is
still
also correct.
there is still the risk accept. So, but that's why I'm saying trusted and not trustworthy, right? Trusted will screw you, trustworthy will not. So the agent. So I work okay with this wording. The agent must be fully trusted and including in remote attestation.
Okay, as long as we're aware of what that means, it's good. But yeah.
Well, if Whimsy has questions, we'll further refine it. Right now, we just simply need to explain to them what it is.
Best case scenarios, they help us work on this document, and then this alignment will go more smoothly.
It's a version 0 draft. I mean, we are allowed a little bit of leeway. Okay, so we're up to 130 now. Let's go further. We're not managing workload identity, we're just utilizing it.
Sorry?
This line 138.
I
just made that one change.
Yeah. Okay. So it's editorial.
All right. So what did I do? Yeah, I didn't want to talk about policies applied with issuing credentials. This is credential issuance. This is RAT's business. In this section, we're basically saying, Whimsy does all the right things. This is what really this says. Whimsy, you guys have your head in the right place. Let's just make sure it stays there.
Yeah.
And then I remove the words and changes. We're not changing the architecture. We just want a few extensions to it.
Your extension sounds harmless, and then they will realize what it is when they try to do it.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'm not.
we're not dependent. We're not dependent upon that issuance for our attestation
No,
because of the agent.
so that's the thing. So Whimsy, on one hand, this is a little schizophrenic there. On one hand, they're saying we don't deal with credential issuance at all, and then they
Yeah.
provide a diagram for how credentials are
Yeah.
issued, right?
Yeah,
And
like
I'm simply saying,
if you look at line 141, Whimsy model has a CA credential issuer that's responsible for provisioning identity credentials. And then, yeah, to your point, they go back and they say, but we don't care about identity credentials.
Yeah.
Credential.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a talking back on itself.
Right. And it's fine again, because I don't want, like, it should not be our goal to antagonize them, simply to accept that some workloads, have special requirements, and as a result, we just need to be careful how we word things. That's really it.
Yeah.
So, but this is where the line 151 becomes important. That's what I'm saying. The underlying assumption with the architecture cannot be that the hosting environment can be fully trusted to establish the identity of the hosted workload. And that is incompatible with the assumptions, as that is incompatible with the assumption of confidential computing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Where I'm saying confidential computing performs their own remote attestation, and workload isolation ensures that the hosting environment cannot interfere with this process. Okay. And then, okay, so 158, once again, we need to be very careful how we word this. So we'll need to go change line 158. I'm going to go do that. The workload cannot rely on an external agent, on an untrusted agent.
Or external to its TCP.
Yeah, and I think the agent itself has to go through attestation. So, or being included in the attestation process. I think you had put that earlier.
Including the agent in the, what do we say? Cannot rely on an untrusted agent. The agent, if any.
What line are you on right now, Mark?
158.
158. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
but if we're going to say that it cannot rely on an untrusted agent, do we need to define what a trusted agent is, or are we comfortable with just saying you can't rely on an untrusted agent?
I think it's perfectly fine to say untrusted. Like, we're just simply saying you cannot rely on an untrusted agent. It's not like we can't have an agent, right? We already discussed that.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm saying, including the agent, if any, in the remote attestation is what you need.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to commit that. Okay, going back. One past line 158. So that's why I'm saying that some Whimsy documents during the JTI claim is optional. For trustworthy workload identity, the requirement is to always have it.
Well, I'm not aligned to that in the first place, but before we go there, I think we need to go back to the definition of provenance that we need to fix. Because in our reference, in the group charter, I think, we have provenance defined as a linkage, which I think we've already concluded it is not. It's a property, a metadata describing the origin, and we should first settle on the definition, I think. Whether we put it in this doc or we fix the charter doc, it's kind of secondary, but I think we need to start there.
Well, fair enough. We have a lot more time to fix the charter before the Madrid meeting. So whatever changes we need to make here, we should make here. So let's see what we said about provenance.
Here we say nothing in the definitions. We just say it's the definition coming from the charter. But this is where, because this is where I would like to. Pretty sure. I mean, I was editing that before.
Let me take a look.
I did coin the definition. If you could just do me a favor and flip over to the pull request 33. with the changes in the definition sections, you will see what I edited, and also that's gonna help my cause with just getting eyeballs on the new definitions I'm proposing.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, we just have to be very careful not to say too much.
Absolutely, agree. And if you can go to the files changed, in the very top, I mean, let's disregard the meat of it, but the definitions at the top, a bit lower, because this is just referring to the
So
list
workload
part.
provenance is the metadata describing the origin composition of the workload instance determined at workload instantiation time.
You're reading the text, but I'm not seeing that on screen. Maybe it hasn't refreshed. Oh, now it has.
Yeah. There's some lag.
Yeah, so what I say, I mean, first thing I'm claiming is why not just include those definitions? I mean, do we consider them fuzzy enough that we need more discussion about them, or are we okay with just kind of copying this definition over to the doc?
I'm looking at it through the eyes of the Whimsy owners, right? The people who've worked hard for a long time to create these documents. So, a bunch of upstarts come in and say, we need you to extend your architecture, and here is a bunch of text about provenance, right? So the reaction you're going to get is a bit of resistance.
But that's what I'm saying. Sorry for cutting in, but that's what I'm saying. I want to cut even more drastically than you have. I want to cut to the bone. Literally have only those definitions, and then a one-liner saying we are compatible with your definition of provenance or with your facilities because provenance is external to you.
Okay, so this is
does Whimsy define provenance?
Not at all. Doesn't mention it at all.
Thank you. So we can't cut into that definition. But we can also not violate their principles, so to speak, right? So yeah, there's that.
Okay, so this is what I think on provenance, because we're going to run out of time here. Let's deal with the changes I propose, and then Batesh, you can do a pull request, and then we can, we'll very quickly in the next day or two settle on that on the mailing list.
I mean, it's already a pull request. I'm not sure. Of course, the reminder of it is.
This is right. So all this text goes into the reference architecture. But for the informational draft, we need to find a few words we need to change.
Yeah, maybe cutting the workload provenance first paragraph, so the marked line, I guess, would be a step.
Because
I can extract the definitions of the separate pull requests so we can discuss offline.
I think this is short and inoffensive, really, if you ask me. It says unique linkage between workload, and then we can always change it later. I just want to make sure that it doesn't become the hurdle on which we crash.
Linkage crosses into binding. I mean, I have struggled with that, honestly.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I agree with the point of maybe saying, we define it in our charter and modifying the charter just in the interest of time for getting this in.
Fair enough. And I guess what I'm trying to say is let's handle that part. It needs to be like as surgical as possible. Like it needs to be like a fingernail clipping, not like a anything you need general anesthesia for. So
yeah.
Where was I? Hold on, I need to go back to my pull request.
I'm sorry, I missed a couple meetings, but was there a reason why you used the word linkage instead of binding?
That
a unique binding with
a few meetings ago, but linkage was effectively trying to convey the fact that it is a
loose binding.
It's a connection,
basically.
Yeah, it's a connection, but a loose one.
It's relational and not cryptographic.
Correct. So just like a unique identifier in that's effectively it is. So that's it. The unique identifier in the credential, and then you can go look it up with the credential issue. That's
So,
really all.
and we'll discuss all that internally in
yes.
next things, because indeed I have a problem with that.
Yeah. So we were at 163. The Whimsy document 3 JDI claims is optional. For trustworthy workload identity, the requirement is to always have it. Now, again, I really think it needs to be a should. It cannot be a must, because I don't think everyone will be able to do it. So I think we need to be kind of magnanimous with that. Maybe I don't know how to trade like for trustworthy workload identity. Maybe like an attempt should be made to include it.
But then, Mark,
Something
again,
like
I think you're crossing to solution space. I don't think we need the JTI really to attach provenance. It's just one of the methods. I'm fine with, maybe pressing harder for it being there as a, something we can leverage as a possibility. But then if you want to just, stay out of however number of changes we request of Whimsy, I would say, why don't we just say nothing, or just do a softer wording saying, oh, by the way, we can use this property, without putting a color to, this being, very important or something that they would need to change, because I'm not sure.
So about this, how about we just
anything.
remove one line 163, and we already say you have JTI, you have this thing, so there's no change.
Yeah.
Let's not even talk about requiring it. Okay.
Let's just go. Yep.
Okay.
So I'm gonna remove line 163.
I mean, it's foundational for trusted workload identity, but it's not required. You just don't accomplish trusted workload identity without it.
Right. It's not a hill we're dying on right now.
Correct.
Exactly. We will dig that translate out.
All right. Going back. So we're now. So there's a bunch of stuff I removed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I removed the policy for issuance credentials. I removed obtaining workload provenance. I removed integrating with credential issuance, because again, credentials issuance is not Whimsy. So all of that is just likely to derail. We may even kill this line 172.
Set of compliant test.
I mean,
So,
if Whimsy doesn't care about provenance, why do we even enumerate? I will kill the entire thing, actually.
They will do like basically the entire provenance section.
Yeah,
But
except
this
this one-liner that you
right,
have. Right? Yeah, but then what comprises provenance? If they don't care, we care, of course. But why do we list, what goes into that, so that they can, harp on it if something that they find they do not like?
But it is essential difference,
We
right?
can so we mentioned remote attestation, and what do we say for provenance, like if anything?
I mean, high level, I think the only thing that we want to say is we care about provenance. We want to attach provenance records to the credentials, and we think whatever you provide as facilities are going to serve us well already. No extensions required.
Okay, so
I mean, because provenance is foundational to trusted workload identity, but it's not foundational to Whimsy. So I think we just state that, and then take everything else out.
So what do I say about like from line 161? Let's try and figure this out. We only have a few minutes left here, so we gotta hurry.
161.
160. So this is from hashtag provenance.
Yeah.
I think
Like
maybe we should just say
this.
as what Eric said, provenance is a fundamental component of the TWI architecture, but and that's it. And then don't say
that's it.
anything. Yeah.
Well, how about this? We'll say provenance is a key component of trustworthy workload identity, and we believe the unique credential identifier, such as GTI claim or a unique certificate ID will suffice for this purpose.
I mean, I think we're getting too deep when we don't need to, in my opinion.
Kill the section.
Yeah, kill the section and just say it's foundational to trusted workload identity, and that's it. Because here's the thing, right? They don't address provenance at all, because provenance has no bearing on the trusted execution environment, but it does have, you know, TWI is foundational in provenance.
Okay.
So provenance and understanding where your workload comes from is foundational. I think that's all we really need to say.
Well, again, I don't know what to say then, because either I kill the section or I don't kill the section.
I think we should keep the section, but with just that sentence that provenance is a consideration that is foundational for confidential computing workloads.
Yeah.
Yep.
We just made the statement so that at least it raises awareness, but we don't, you know, conflict or collide with them and we don't poke the finger at them.
But how about we then simply say we believe a unique credential identifier such as GTI claim or a finance certificate provides sufficient bootstrapping for it?
It's not for us, right? It's for them.
Yeah.
So the point is why we should keep that section here is if tomorrow their architecture changes and considers provenance, then still they need to look at us and say, how are you doing this? Yeah.
Well, we should say it's foundational for us, and you already give it to us sufficiently. So thank you. That's what I would convey.
I lean towards Manu's and others one sentence awareness here and cutting the rest.
Anything else?
Nope. I think we're good with that.
Just this one statement.
Just that one statement.
Well, then they're going to ask, what do you want? Why are you mentioning it? What do you want from us?
So that's the thing. We don't require anything from them for it,
Mm-hmm.
do we?
Yes, we don't.
Well, shouldn't we say that then?
Yeah, but as soon as they realize, oh, we want this too, they can't suddenly conflict with us. That's the point.
Exactly.
But we can't write that. That is why there's this reminder sentence.
Exactly. That's what I meant. Yes.
Yep.
So you don't want to mention anything about GTI claim or?
I mean, I think by mentioning it, we're opening up a conversation that we don't need to have with them.
Well, by mentioning this, we're opening up this conversation, because then they will be like, "What do you want?"
Correct. And then we can go back and we can define what it is we want after the fact. I mean, we still have all the iterations of all the data that we had put in there, and we can get deeper into the conversation with the with the Whimsy team. But right now we're just saying it's foundational for trusted workload identity, even though it's not foundational for trusted execution environment. I think that at that point we go back to Manu's point. If they want to open up the dialogue and have a conversation and they want to include things in the Whimsy architecture that cover provenance, then we do that at a later date if that's required. I don't think it's going to be required.
Okay, so just
I think they're going to leave it alone.
Well,
but if you feel like we need to add JTI, we can.
I'm going to register my disagreement here, but fine. That's how you feel.
Okay.
We'll stick with that. Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff here that's cut. All right, that's it. So I'm going to ask for a review, like one last review.
Yep.
But do I need to review
Just
this?
one thing that popped into my head with platform binding, of course, not getting in this volume that we have for the reference architecture into this doc. Should we consider a one-liner or a one sentence similar to what we just did with provenance about, we care about platform binding,
I would say no. I
placeholder?
would say no, not yet. Not yet. Let's do that at a later time. And also, this is rats. Like Whimsy is probably going to shoot a big hole with the geofencing too, because it needs to be part of credential issuance, not credential usage.
Yeah.
But all the content you author just goes into the reference architecture. Just copy it over into the Google Doc.
Yeah, which I understand. And now, parting question, no answer required. What's the venue where we are publishing the reference architecture? Is this also the IETF or is this a different venue?
So I believe we should work on the reference architecture. So at least we are in agreement on what that document is. And I believe we need to start engaging with the RATS working group.
Okay, that's what I thought. That was my suspicion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the Montreal IETF, which is later in the year, I think we need to do the same informational draft, and then we need to start engaging with RATS early to basically say, guys, we you know, your architecture is not complete because it does not talk about identities.
Absolutely. You will be in Madrid, Mark, right?
I will probably be in Madrid and in Montreal at this point because I need to start being there in person. But yes, I'll be in Madrid.
Excellent.
All right, cool. Thank you all very much. Let's get this draft submitted. Maybe Hank, you can do the honors, but let's get these remaining pull requests in. I also have one on security considerations. So let's review that offline. But again, by Thursday end of day, this needs to be in.
Okay.
Can do.
No
By the way,
offline.
Are we moving the reference architecture to GitHub or is it staying in Google Docs?
Let's do Google Docs. GitHub is such a pain in the ass.
Yep.
Agreed.
But we'll be authoring a separate informational draft for RATS, and that's going to be in GitHub.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, sweet.
Okay.
Talk to you all later. And next Tuesday, we'll be starting the work on reference architecture again.
Thank you. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
back.
Bye.